and Tom himself, if he was such a nice old man. Tom, why did you come with us? Just because Moraine asked? His shoulders shook. She realized he was laughing at himself. As to that, who can say? Aes Sedai asking favors are not easily resisted. Perhaps it was the prospect of your pleasant company for the voyage. Or perhaps I decided Rand is old enough to look after himself for a while. He laughed out loud, and she had to laugh with him. The idea of this white-haired old fellow looking after Rand, the feeling that she could trust him came back, stronger than ever, as he looked at her. Not because he could laugh at himself, or not only that. She could not have given a reason beyond the fact that, looking up into those blue eyes, she could not make herself believe this man would ever do anything to harm her. The urge to pull one of his mustaches again was almost overwhelming, but she schooled her hands to stillness. She was not a child, after all. A child. She opened her mouth, and suddenly everything went out of her head. Please excuse me, Tom, she said hurriedly. I must... excuse me. She started toward the stern quickly, not waiting for a reply. He probably thought the ship's motion had upset her stomach. Wave Dancer was pitching more rapidly, moving faster through the great sea swells as the wind freshened. Two men stood at the wheel on the stern deck, the muscle of both needed to hold the vessel on course. The sailmistress was not on deck, but the windfinder was, standing at the rail beyond the wheelmen, bare to the waist like the men, studying the sky where billowing clouds rolled more fiercely than the ocean. For once it was not Jorin's state of dress or undress that bothered Elaine. The glow of a woman embracing Haidar surrounded her, clearly visible despite the lurid light. That was what she had felt, what had drawn her, a woman channeling. Elaine stopped short of the stern deck to study what she was doing. The flows of air and water the windfinder handled were cable thick, yet her weaving was intricate, almost delicate, and it reached as far as the eye could see across the waters, a web drawn across the sky. The wind rose higher, higher, the wheelmen strained, and Wave Dancer flew through the sea. The weaving stopped, the glow of Saidar vanished, and Jorin slumped at the rail, leaning on her hands. Elaine climbed the ladder quietly, yet the seafolk woman spoke in a soft voice without turning her head as soon as she was near enough to hear. In the middle as I worked, I thought that you were watching me. I could not stop then. There might have been a storm even Wave Dancer could not survive. The Sea of Storms is well named. It will throw up bad winds enough without my help. I meant not to do this at all, but Coin said we must go quickly, for you and for the Coromor. She raised her eyes to peer at the sky. This wind will hold until morning if it pleases the light. This is why the sea folk do not carry Aes Sedai, Elaine said, taking a place beside her at the rail. So the tower won't learn windfinders can channel. That is why it was your decision to let us aboard, not your sister's. Jorin, the tower will not try to stop you. There is no law in the tower to stop any woman channeling, even if she is not Aes Sedai. Your white tower will interfere. It will try to reach onto our ships, where we are free of the land and landsmen. It will try to tie us to itself, binding us away from the sea. She sighed heavily. The wave that has passed cannot be called back. Elaine wished she could tell her it was not so, but the tower did seek out women and girls who could learn to channel, both to bolster the numbers of Aes Sedai, dwindling now compared to what they once had been, and because of the danger of learning unguided. In truth, a woman who could be taught to touch the true source usually found herself in the tower whatever she wanted, at least until she was trained enough not to kill herself or others by accident. After a moment, Jorin went on. It is not all of us, only some. We send a few girls to Tar Valon so Aes Sedai will not come looking among us. No ship will carry Aes Sedai whose windfinder can weave the winds. When you first named yourself, I thought you must know me, but you did not speak. You asked passage, and I hoped perhaps you were not Aes Sedai despite your rings. A foolish hope. I could feel the strength of you both, and now the White Tower will know. I cannot promise to keep your secret, but I will do what I can. The woman deserved more. Jorin, I swear by the honor of House Trakand of Andor that I will do my best to keep your secret from any who would harm you or your people, and that if I must reveal it to anyone, I will do all in my ability to protect your people from interference. House Trakand is not without influence, even in the tower, and I will make Mother use it, if need be, somehow. If it pleases the light, Jorin said fatalistically, all will be well. All will be well, and all will be well, and all manner of thing will be well, if it pleases the light. There was a Damani on that Seanchan ship, wasn't there? The Windfinder gave her a quizzical look. One of the captive women who can channel. You see deeply for one so young. That is why I first thought you might not be Aes Sedai, because you are so young. I have daughters older than you, I think. I did not know she was a captive. That makes me wish we could have saved her. Wave Dancer outran the Seanchan vessel easily at first. We had heard of the Seanchan and their vessels with ribbed sails, that they demanded strange oaths and punished those who would not give them. But then the Damani broke 2 of his masts, and they boarded him with swords. I managed to start fires on the Seanchan vessel. Weaving fire is difficult for me beyond lighting a lamp, but it pleased the light to make it enough, and Toram led the crew to fight the Seanchan back to their own decks. We cut loose the boarding hooks and their ship drifted away, burning. They were too occupied with trying to save him to bother us as we limped away. I regretted seeing him burn and sink then. It was a fine ship, I think, for heavy seas. Now I regret it because we might have saved the woman, the Damani. Even if she damaged him, perhaps she would not have free. The light illumine her soul, and the waters take her peacefully. Telling the story had saddened her. She needed to be distracted. Jorin, Atha Anmier calls ships he. Everyone else I've ever met calls them she. I don't suppose it makes any difference. But why? The men will give you a different answer, the Windfinder said, smiling, speaking of strength and grandness and the like as men will. But this is the truth. A ship is alive, and he is like a man, with a true man's heart. She rubbed the rail fondly, as if stroking something alive, something that could feel her caress. Treat him well and care for him properly, and he will fight for you against the worst sea. He will fight to keep you alive, even after the sea has long since given him his own death stroke. Neglect him, though. Ignore the small warnings he gives of danger, and he will drown you in a flat sea beneath a cloudless sky. Elaine hoped Rand was not as fickle as that. Then why does he hop about, glad to see me go 1 minute, and sending Juilin Xandar after me the next? She told herself to stop thinking about him. He was a long way away. There was nothing to be done about him now. She glanced over her shoulder toward the bow. Tom was gone. She was sure she had found the key to his puzzle, just before she had felt the Windfinder channeling. Something to do with his smile. It was gone, whatever it was. Well, she meant to find it again before they reached Tanchico if she had to sit on him, but he would still be there in the morning. Jorin, how long before we reach Tanchico? I have been told Rakers are the fastest ships in the world, but how fast? To Tanchico? To serve the Coromor, we will not stop at any port between. Perhaps 10 days, if I can weave the winds well enough, if it pleases the light that I find the proper currents. Perhaps as few as 7 or 8, with the grace of the light. 10 days? Elaine gasped. It cannot be possible. She had seen maps, after all. The other woman's smile was half pride, half indulgence. As you yourself said, the fastest ships in the world. The next quickest take half again as long over any stretch, and most more than twice as long. Coasting craft that hug the shore and anchor in the shallows each night, she sniffed contemptuously, require 10 times as much. Jorin, would you teach me to do what you were just doing? The Windfinder stared, her dark eyes wide and shining in the fading light. Teach you? But you are Aes Sedai. Jorin, I have never woven a flow half as thick as those you were handling. And the scope of it! I'm astounded, Jorin. The Windfinder stared a moment more, no longer in amazement, but as if trying to fix Elaine's face in her mind. Finally, she kissed the fingers of her right hand and pressed them to Elaine's lips. If it pleases the light, we both shall learn. Chapter 21. Into the Heart. Tyran nobility filled the great vaulted chamber with its huge polished red stone columns 10 feet thick, rising into shadowed heights above golden lamps hanging on golden chains. The high lords and ladies were arrayed in a thick hollow circle under the great dome at the chamber's heart, with the lesser nobles ranked behind, row on row, back into the forest of columns, all in their best velvets and silks and laces, wide sleeves and ruffed collars and peaked hats, all murmuring uneasily so the towering ceiling echoed the sounds of nervous geese. Only the high lords themselves had ever before been bidden to this place, called the Heart of the Stone, and they had come only 4 times a year, at the twin demands of law and custom. They came now, all who were not out in the countryside somewhere, at the summons of their new lord, the maker of law and breaker of custom. The packed crowd gave way before Moiraine as soon as they saw who she was, so she and Egwene moved in a pocket of open space. Lan's absence irritated Moiraine. It was not like the man to vanish when she might need him. His way usually was to watch over her as if she could not fend for herself without a guardian. Had she not been able to feel the bond linking them and known he could not be very far from the stone, she might have worried. He thought the strings Nynaeve was tying to him as hard as he'd ever fought the Trollocs and the Blight, but much as he might deny it, that young woman had bound him as tightly as she herself did, though in other ways. He might as well try tearing steel with his hands as those ties. She was not jealous exactly, but Lan had been her sword arm, her shield and companion for too many years for her to give him up lightly. I have done what had to be done there. She will have him if I die, and not before. Where is the man? What is it? One red-gowned, lace-ruffed woman, a horse-faced lady of the land called Leitha, drew her skirts away a bit too assiduously, and Moiraine looked at her. Merely looked, without slowing her step, but the woman shuddered and dropped her eyes. Moiraine nodded to herself. She could accept that these people hated Aes Sedai, not endure open rudeness on top of veiled slights. Besides, the rest shied back another step after seeing Leitha face them. Are you certain he said nothing of what he means to announce? She asked, quietly. In this gabble, no one 3 paces away could have made out a word. The Tyrans kept about that distance now. She did not like being overheard. Nothing, Egwene said just as softly. She sounded as irritated as Moiraine felt. There have been rumors. Rumors? What sort of rumors? The girl was not that good at controlling her face and voice. Clearly she had not heard the tales of doings in the 2 rivers. Betting that Rand had not, though, might be putting her horse at a 10-foot fence. You should bring him to confide in you. He needs an active ear. It will help him to talk out his troubles with someone he can trust. Egwene gave her a sidelong glance. She was becoming too sophisticated for such simple methods. Still, Moiraine had spoken unadorned truth. The boy did need someone to listen, and by listening lighten his burdens, and it might work. He will not confide in anyone, Moiraine. He hides his pains and hopes he can deal with them before anyone notices. Anger flashed across Egwene's face. The wool-brained mule. Moiraine felt a momentary sympathy. The girl could not be expected to accept Rand strolling about arm in arm with Elaine, kissing in corners where they thought themselves unseen. And Egwene did not know the half yet. Commiseration did not last. There was too much of importance to deal with for the girl to be fretting over what she could not have in any case. Elaine and Nynaeve should be aboard the Raker by now, out of the way. Their voyage might eventually tell her if her suspicions about the Windfinders were correct. That was a minor point, though. At worst, the pair had enough gold to buy a ship and hire a crew. which might be necessary given the rumors of Tanchico, with enough left for the bribes so often necessary with Tarabana officials. Tom Maryland's room was empty, and her informants had reported him muttering about Tanchico on his way out of the stone. He would see they got a good crew and found the right officials. The purported plan with Mazrim Time was much
Hey,
the more
Soy, how you
likely
doing?
of the two, but her messages to the Amerlin should have taken care of that. The two young women could handle the much less
Hope you're
likely
doing good,
eventuality
Soy.
of a mysterious danger hidden in
Definitely appreciate
Tanchico,
you stopping
and they
by.
were out of her hair and away from Rand. She only
Yeah,
regretted
it's
that
a
Egwene
little
had
bright in
refused
here.
to
It's
go
not my usual
Tarvalin would have been best for
dark
all
looking
three,
room.
but
I gotta get
Tanchico would do. Speaking
another
of mood,
colored light
Rand,
again.
do you mean to continue with
Oh
this
yeah,
plan
that's
to go into
pretty
the
much what I'm
woods?
doing. Just
I do, the
chilling,
girl said
enjoying a
firmly.
bowl and
She needed to be
a
back
book
in the
before
tower
I
training
head
her
off to
strength.
bed.
What was
Eventually.
Tom thinking of? She will probably give me one of those sayings about boats and fish when I met her. At least Egwene would be out of the way too, and the Aiel girl would look after her. Perhaps the wise ones really could teach her something of dreaming. That had been the most astounding letter from them. Not that she could afford to heed most of it. Egwene's journey into the waste might be useful in the long run. The last line of Tyrants gave way, making a little hollow, and she and Egwene faced the open area under the vast dome. The noble's ill ease was most evident here.
Yeah, we're
Many
at. What
studied
book
their
are we
feet
at
like sulky children,
in the
and others
series?
stared at nothing, looking at anything
We're
but where
on
they
book
were.
4, The
Here was
Shadow
where
Rising.
Kalendor had been kept before Rand took it. Here beneath this dome, untouched by any hand for more than 3,000 years.
Got the munchies?
Untouchable
Hell
by
yeah.
any hand but that of
I don't know,
the
that's a
ragged
good thing or a
Weaver.
bad thing depending on
Tyrants did not like it
how late
that
it is
the heart
for
of
you.
stone existed. Poor woman, Egwene murmured. Moiraine followed the girl's gaze. The High Lady Altima, already gowned and ruffed and capped in shimmering white, as Tyran widows were, though her husband still lingered, was perhaps the most composed of all the nobles. She was a slender, lovely woman, made more so by her small, sad smile, with large brown eyes and long black hair hanging halfway to her waist. A tall woman.
Hell yeah. Oh
though
shit, it's
Moiraine
3:30
admitted
for
she
you?
didn't tend to judge
That's
such
crazy.
things by her own height.
Yeah, I
and
definitely
rather
appreciate
too
you
full
stopping
visits.
by being as late as it
Tyrian
is,
were
so
not a tall people, and she had been considered short
I
even.
know I do mine kind of late.
Yes, a
But
poor woman, she said.
I figured I'd
But
do
she
it
did
this
not
late,
mean it
just
for sympathy. It was good to see Egwene
give me
not
something
yet
to
grown
do since I'm already up
sophisticated
doing
enough to
this
see beneath the surface all the time.
at this
The
time
girl was already
anyways.
far less malleable than she should have been for years yet.
And doing it
She
this way
needed to be
too
shaped
actually
before she was hardened.
makes it to
Tom
actually
had
go to
missed
sleep
with Altima,
earlier than I
or
usually
perhaps he
do.
had not wanted to see. He seemed to have a strange reluctance to move against women. The High Lady Altima was far more dangerous than her husband or her lover, both of whom she had manipulated without either knowing it. Perhaps more dangerous than anyone else in Tyr, man or woman. She would find others to use soon enough. It was Altima's style to remain in the background and pull strings. Something would have to be done about her. Moiraine shifted her gaze
Hell yeah,
along the
definitely
rows of
appreciate
high
it,
lords
so
and ladies until she found Estanda in brocaded yellow silks with a large ivory lace ruff.
I do me
A certain sternness
no matter
marked the
what,
beauty
it's
of her
just
face, and the occasional glances she gave out
like I say,
were
still
iron-hard. Feelings between the two
think
went
about
beyond
shit
mere
a lot more
rivalry.
than I probably
Had
should.
they been men, one would have shed the other's blood in a duel years since. If that antagonism could be sharpened, Altima would be too busy to make trouble for Rand. For an instant, she regretted sending Tom away. She did not like having to waste her time with these petty affairs. But he had too much influence with Rand. The boy had to depend on her counsel. Hers and hers alone. The Light knew he was difficult enough without interference. Tom had been settling the boy down to rule Tyr when he needed to be moving on to greater things. But that was dealt with for now. The problem of bringing Tom Maryland to heel could be managed later. Rand was the dilemma.
Right, so
What
I
is he
know.
going to announce? Where is he? He has learned the first art of kings, it seems, making people wait. She did not realize she had spoken aloud until Egwene gave her a startled look. She smoothed the irritation.
I try
from her
not to
face
most of the time, but
Rand would appear here eventually, and she would
Sometimes
learn
it's
what he
hard, I
liked to do,
guess.
learn along with everyone else. She nearly ground her teeth. That blind fool of a boy, running headlong through the night with never a care for cliffs, never thinking he could carry the world over as well as himself. If only she could keep him from rushing back to save his village. He would want to, but he could not afford to do so now. Perhaps he did not know. It could be hoped. Matt stood across from them, uncombed and slouching with his hands in the pockets of his high-collared green coat. It was half unbuttoned as usual, and his boots were scuffed, in sharp contrast to the precise elegance around him. He shifted nervously as he saw her looking at him, then gave one of his rudely defiant grins. At least he was here, under her eye. Matt Coffin was an exhausting young man to keep track of, avoiding her spies with ease. He never gave any sign that he knew they were there, but her eyes and ears reported that he seemed to slide out of sight whenever they got too close. "I think he sleeps in his coats," Egwene said disapprovingly. "On purpose. I wonder where Perrin is." She went on tiptoes, trying
No
to
shit, that's
search over the
crazy,
heads
sorry.
of the assemblage. "I don't see him." Frowning, Moiraine scanned the crowd. Not that she could make out much beyond the front row. Lan could have been back among the columns. She would not strain, though, or jump up on her toes like an anxious child. Lan was due a talking to he would not soon forget when she laid hands on him. With Nynaeve tugging at him one way, and ta'Veren, Rand at least, seemingly pulling another, she sometimes wondered how well their bond still held. At
I
least his
definitely
time
appreciate
with
it,
Rand
so
was useful.
yeah,
It
stuff's
gave her
definitely not
little
getting
strain
easier,
to the
but
young man.
I've
"Perhaps he is
I've
with Fael,"
I've survived
Egwene
worse,
said.
so
"He won't have run away, Moiraine. Perrin
I
has a strong
figure
sense
I
of
can
humor,
survive that. I can survive just about
almost
anything.
as strong as
At
a
least
warder,
survive what I've
Moiraine
survived throughout
knew,
my life.
which was why she did not keep eyes and ears on him, as she
I definitely
tried to
don't
with
give
Lan.
up.
Fael has
I'm
been
kind of
trying to
stubborn
talk
that
him
way.
into leaving, girl. Quite possibly he was with her. He usually was. Do not look so surprised. They often talk and argue where they can be overheard. "I'm not surprised you know," Egwene said dryly. "Only that Fael would try to talk him out of what he knows he has to do. Perhaps she does not believe it as he does." Moiraine had not believed it herself at first, had not seen it. Three
Yeah, definitely
ta'Veren, all
hard-headed.
the same age, coming out of one village. She must have been blind not to realize they had to be connected.
I can definitely admit
Everything
that.
had become much more complicated with that knowledge. Like trying to juggle three of Tom's colored balls.
Hard-headed
one
and
had to be
stubborn.
blindfolded. She'd seen Tom do that, but she did not want to try. There was no guide to how they were connected, or what they were supposed to do. The prophecies never mentioned companions. "I like her," Egwene said. "She is good for him, just as he is, and she cares for him deeply." "I suppose she does." If Fael was troublesome, Moiraine would have to have a talk with her. Fael had been killed, or have one of her eyes and ears do it. That should settle her down. I don't believe it. They love each other, Moiraine. Can't you see that? Can't you even recognize a human emotion when you see one?
Maybe that's one of my,
gave her a firm look.
you can
One
see
that
my
set
better
her on her
qualities
heels
is I'm
in a
stubborn and
self-confident
hard-headed.
The girl knew so little and thought she knew so much. Moiraine was about to tell her so in withering fashion when startled, even fearful gasps rose from among the Tyrants. The crowd gave way hurriedly, more than eagerly, those in front ruthlessly forcing those behind farther back, opening a wide passage to the space beneath the dome. Rand strode down that corridor, looking straight ahead, imperious in a red coat embroidered with golden scrolls up his sleeves, cradling Kalendor in his right arm like a scepter. It was he
Had
that
to
made
agree
the
with you on
Tyrants
that,
give way,
sorry.
though. Behind him came perhaps 100 Aiel,
Except for I don't
spears
have the
and
wife or the
arrow-nocked
kids,
bows in
so.
hand, Shufa wrapped around their heads,
But I stay in
black
good stuff.
veils hiding everything but their eyes. Moiraine thought she recognized Ruark at the front, just behind Rand, but only by the way he moved. They were anonymous,
Keep moving
ready
forward.
for killing. Plainly, whatever he meant to say, Rand intended to quell any resistance before it had a chance to coalesce.
Yeah, I gotta crawl my way forward
The
or
Aiel
walk my
halted,
way forward.
but Rand kept on until he
I'll
stood
still be
centered
moving
under
forward.
the dome, then ran his eye around the gathering. He seemed surprised and perhaps upset at the sight of Egwene, but he gave Moiraine an infuriating smile, and Mat one that made the pair of them look like boys when Mat returned it. The Tyrans were white-faced, not knowing whether to stare at Rand and Callandor or the veiled Aiel. Either could be death. The High Lord Sunamon, Rand said suddenly and loudly, making that plump fellow jump, has guaranteed me a treaty with Mayenne, strictly following the lines I gave
Oh
him.
shit. Hell yeah,
He's
Grandpa.
guaranteed this with his life. He laughed as if he had made a joke, and most of the nobles laughed with him. Not Sunamon, who looked distinctly ill. If he fails, Rand announced, he has agreed to be hanged, and he will be obliged. The laughter stopped. Sunamon's face took on a sickly tinge of green. Egwene gave Moiraine a troubled glance. She was gripping her skirt with both hands. Moiraine
I
only
ain't get
waited.
up. I'm still gonna
He had not
do
brought
what I
every
do
noble
all the
within
time.
10 miles together to tell them of a treaty or threaten a fat fool. She made her hands let go of her own skirts. Rand turned in a circle, weighing the faces he saw. Because of this treaty, ships will soon be available to carry Tyran grain west to find new markets. There were a few appreciative murmurs at that, quickly stifled. But there is more. The armies of Tyr are to march. A cheer rose, tumultuous shouts ringing from the ceilings. Men capered, even the High Lords, and shook their fists over their heads and tossed up peaked velvet hats. Women, smiling as rapturously as the men, bestowed kisses on the cheeks of those who would go to war and delicately sniffed the tiny porcelain bottles of smelling salts no Tyran noblewoman would be without, pretending to be made faint by the news. Ilion shall fall, someone cried, and hundreds of voices seized it like thunder. Ilion shall fall! Ilion shall fall! Ilion shall fall! Moiraine saw Egwene's lips moving, the words crushed beneath the jubilation. She could read them, though. No, Rand, please, no, please don't. On the far side of Rand, Mat was frowning in disapproving silence. They and she were the only ones not celebrating, aside from the ever-watchful Aiel and Rand himself. Rand's smile was twisted contemptuously and never touched his eyes. There was fresh sweat on his face. She met his sardonic stare and waited. There would be more, and not, she suspected, to her liking. Rand raised his left hand. Slowly, quiet fell, those in front anxiously shushing those behind. He waited for absolute silence. The armies will move north, into Cairhien. The High Lord Mylon will command, and under him the High Lords Gwayam, Aracombe, Herne, Maracon, and Simon. The armies will be generously financed by the High Lord Torian, the wealthiest of you, who will accompany the armies to see that his money is spent wisely. Dead silence greeted this pronouncement. No one moved, though plain-faced Torian seemed to be having trouble standing. Moiraine had to give Rand a mental bow for his choices. Sending those 7 out of Tyr neatly eviscerated the 7 most dangerous plots against him, and none of those men trusted each other enough to scheme among themselves. Tom Merrilin had given him good advice. Obviously, their spies had missed some of the things that had slipped into Rand's pockets. But the rest, it was madness. He could not have had this for an answer on the other side of that ter'angreal. It was not possible, surely. Mylon obviously agreed with her, if not for the same reasons. He stepped forward hesitantly, a lean, hard man, but so frightened that the whites of his eyes showed all the way around. My Lord Dragon. He stopped, swallowed, and began again in a marginally stronger voice. My Lord Dragon, intervening in a civil war is stepping into a bog. A dozen factions contend for the Sun Throne, with as many shifting alliances, each one betrayed every day. Besides that, bandits infest Kyrian as fleas on a wild boar. Starving peasants have stripped the land bare. I am reliably informed that they eat bark and leaves. My Lord Dragon, a quagmire, barely begins to describe. Rand cut him off. You do not want to extend Tyr's sway all the way to Kinslayer's dagger, Mylon? That is all right. I know who I mean to sit on the Sun Throne. You do not go to conquer Mylon, but to restore order and peace, and to feed the hungry. There is more grain in the granaries now than Tyr could sell, and the farmers will harvest as much more this year unless you disobey me. Wagons will carry it north behind the armies, and those peasants will not have to eat bark any longer, my lord Mylon. The tall High Lord opened his mouth again, and Rand swung Kalandor down, grounding its crystal point in front of him. You have a question, Mylon. Shaking his head, Mylon backed into the crowd as though trying to hide. I knew he would not start a war, Egwene said fiercely. I knew it. You think there will be less killing in this? Moiraine muttered. What was the boy up to? At least he was not running off to save his village while the Forsaken had their way with the rest of the world. The corpses will be piled as high, girl. You will not know the difference between this and a war. Attacking Illian and Samael would have gained him time, even if it grew into a stalemate. Time to learn his power, and perhaps to bring down one of his strongest enemies, to cow the rest. What did he gain by this? Peace for the land of her birth, starving Kyrian and fed. She would have applauded another time. It was laudably humane, and utterly senseless now. Useless bloodshed, rather than confronting an enemy who would destroy him given the slightest opening. Why? Lanfear. What had Lanfear said to him? What had she done? The possibilities chilled Moiraine's heart. Rand would take closer watching than ever now. She would not allow him to turn to the shadow. Ah, yes, Rand said, as if just remembering something. Soldiers don't know much about feeding hungry people, do they? For that, I think a kind woman's heart is needed. My Lady Altima, I regret intruding on your grief, but will you undertake to oversee distributing the food? You will have a nation to feed, and power to gain. This was his first slip. Aside from deciding on Kyrian over Illian, of course, Altima would certainly return to Tyr on an equal footing with Mylon or Gwyam, ready for more plotting. She would have Rand assassinated before that if he was not careful. Perhaps an accident could be arranged in Kyrian. Altima swept a graceful curtsy, spreading her full white skirts, only a touch of her surprise showing. As my Lord Dragon commands, so do I obey. It will please me greatly to serve the Lord Dragon. I was sure it would, Rand said wryly. As much as you love your husband, you'll not want him with you in Kyrian. Conditions will be hard for a sick man. I took the liberty of having him move to the High Lady Estanda's apartments. She will care for him while you are away, and send him to meet you in Kyrian when he is well. Estanda smiled, a tight smile of triumph. Altima's eyes rolled back in her head, and she crumpled in a heap. Moiraine shook her head slightly. He truly was harder than he had been, more dangerous. Egwene started toward the fallen woman, but Moiraine put a hand on her arm. I think she was only overcome by emotion. I can recognize it, you see. The ladies are tending her. Several of them had clustered around, patting Altima's wrists and passing smelling salts under her nose. She coughed and opened her eyes and looked ready to faint again when she saw Estanda standing over her. Rand just did something.
You have a good night too, so I definitely appreciate you stopping and chilling.
And very cruel. He has a right to look ashamed. Rand did look at that, grimacing at the floor stones under his boots. Perhaps he was not as hard as he was trying to be.
Hell yeah,
Not
sorry.
undeserved, however, Moiraine observed. The girl showed promise, picking up on what she
It's almost getting that time for me
but she
too.
still needed to learn to control her emotions, to see
You
what
gotta get
had
up.
done as well as she saw
At least
what
try
she
to
wished
get
to
up
fix.
somewhat early.
Let us hope he is finished with being clever for
me and my
today.
brother got to do grocery
Very
shopping
few
tomorrow.
in the great chamber understood exactly what had happened, only that Altima's fainting had upset the Lord Dragon. A few in the back raised shouts of, "Carian shall fall!"
Hell yeah, Sword. If we
With you
appreciate
to
it.
lead us, my Lord Dragon, we shall conquer the world. A lumpy-faced young man
Hey, White
shouted,
Tupac, how you
half
doing?
supporting Torian. Estian, Torian's eldest son. The lumpy-faced resemblance was clear, though the father was still mumbling to himself. Jerking his head up, Rand appeared startled, or perhaps angry.
Good morning, bro.
I will not be with you.
Well, I guess technically it is somewhat morning.
That certainly brought silence again. Every eye was on him, but his attentions were all on Callandor. The crowd flinched as he lifted the crystal blade before his face. Sweat rolled down his face, much more sweat than before.
I hope you're doing good, White Tupac.
Callandor before I came.
I'm just chilling,
hold it again until I
smoking a bowl and listening to a book before I head to bed.
Blazed in his hands. Whirling it hilt uppermost, he drove it down into the stone floor. Bluish lightning arced wildly toward the dome above. The stone rumbled loudly, and the stone shook, dancing, screaming people from the floor. Moraine pushed against the wall while hammers still reverberated through the wreck. What had he done? And why? It was the worst of all her nightmares. The Aiel had already regained their feet. Everyone else lay stunned or huddled on hands and knees, except for Rand. He was on one knee, both hands holding Callandor's hilt, with the blade driven halfway into the floor stones.
Oh yeah, definitely appreciate it, White Tupac.
Sweat glistened
Definitely
on his face.
hope you have a good night's sleep after this.
Away, one finger at a time, held them cupped around the hilt, yet not touching it. For a moment, Moraine thought he was going to take hold of it again. Instead, he forced himself to his
my lives tend to be...
He did have to force himself. She was certain of it. This while I'm gone.
A little later than
more the way it had
most
been
people.
When she first found him in his village, but no less sure or firm than it had been moments before. Look at it, and remember me. Remember I will come back for it. If anyone wants to take my place, all they have to do is pull it out. He waggled a finger at them, grinning almost mischievously. But remember the price of failure. Turning on his heel, he marched out of the chamber, the Aiel falling in behind him. Staring at the
right
sword
back there.
rising
Gotta
out
go
of
get
the
a
floor
refill
of
on
the
my
heart,
drink.
the tyrants got their feet more slowly. Most looked ready to run, but too frightened to. That man, Egwene grumbled, dusting off her green linen dress. Is he mad? She clapped a hand to her mouth. Oh, Moraine, he isn't, is he? Is he? Not yet. The light Sandy is not, Moraine muttered. She could not take her eyes from the sword any more than the Tyrans could. The light take the boy. Why could he not have remained the amenable youngling she had found in Emmons Field? She made herself start after Rand. But I will find out. Half running, they caught up quickly in a broad, tapestry-lined hallway. The Aiel, veils hanging loose now, but easily raised if needed, moved aside without slowing. They glanced at her and at Egwene, hard faces unchanging, but eyes touched by the wariness Aiel always had around Aes Sedai. How they could be uneasy at her while calmly following Rand, she did not understand. Learning more than fragments about them was difficult. They answered questions freely about anything that was of no interest to her. Her informants and her own eavesdropping overheard nothing. The work of eyes and ears would no longer try. Not since one woman had been found left bound and gagged, hanging by her ankles from battlements and staring wild-eyed at the 400-foot drop beneath her. And not since the man who had simply disappeared. The man was just gone. The woman, refusing to go higher than the ground floor, had been a constant reminder until Moraine sent her into the country. Rand did not slow down any more than the Aiel when she and Egwene fell in on either side of him. His glance was wary too, but in a different way, and touched with exasperated anger. I thought you were gone, he said to Egwene. I thought you went with Elaine and Nynaeve. You should have. Even Tanchico is... Why did you stay? I won't be staying much longer, Egwene said. I'm going to the Waste with Avienda, to Roidian, to study with the Wise Ones. He missed a step as the girl mentioned the Waste, glancing at her uncertainly, then strode on. He seemed composed now, too much so, a boiling tea kettle with the lid strapped down and the spout plugged. Do you remember swimming in the Waterwood? He said quietly. I used to float on my back in a pool and think the hardest thing I'd ever have to do was plow a field, unless maybe it was shearing sheep. Shearing from sunup till bedtime, hardly stopping to eat until the clip was in. Spinning, Egwene said. I hated it worse than scrubbing floors. Twisting the threads made your fingers so sore. Why did you do it? Warren demanded, before they could go on with this childhood reminiscing. He gave her a sidelong look and a smile mocking enough to belong to Matt. Could I really have hung her for trying to kill a man who was plotting to kill me? Would there be more justice in that than in what I did? The grin slid from his face. Is there justice in anything I do? Sunamon will hang if he fails, because I said so. He'll deserve it after the way he's tried to take advantage, with never a care if his own people starved. But he'll not go to the gallows for that. He will hang because I said he would. Because I said it. Egwene laid a hand on his arm, but Moiraine would not allow him to sidestep. You know that this is not what I mean. He nodded. This time his smile had a frightening rictus quality. Calendar. With that in my hands, I can do anything. Anything. I know I can do anything. But now it's a weight off my shoulders. You don't understand, do you? She did not, though it nettled her that he saw it. She kept silent, and he went on. Perhaps it will help if you know it comes from the prophecies. Into the heart he thrusts his sword. Into the heart, to hold their hearts. Who draws it out shall follow after. What hand can grasp that fearful blade? You see? Straight from the prophecy. You forget one thing, she told him tightly. You drew Calendor in fulfillment of prophecy. The safeguards that held it awaiting you for 3,000 years and more are gone. It is the sword that cannot be touched no longer. I could channel it free myself. Worse, any of the Forsaken could. What if Lanfear returns? She could use Calendor no more than I, but she could take it. He did not react to the name, because he did not fear her, in which case he was a fool, or for another reason. If Samael or Ravin or any male Forsaken puts his hand on Calendor, he can wield it as well as you. Think of facing the power you give up so casually. Think of that power in the hands of the Shadow. I almost hope they'll try. A threatening light shone in his eyes. They seemed gray storm clouds. There is a surprise awaiting anyone who tries to channel Calendor out of the stone, Moiraine. Do not think of taking it to the tower for safekeeping. I could not make the trap pick and choose. The power is all it needs to spring and reset, ready to trap again. I am not giving Calendor up forever, just until I... He took a deep breath. Calendor will stay there until I come back for it. By being there, reminding them of who I am and what I am, it makes sure I can come back without an army, a haven of sorts, with the likes of Altima and Sunamon to welcome me home. If Altima survives the Justice, her husband and Estanda will meet out, and Sunamon survives mine. What a wretched tangle. He could not make it selected, or would not. She was determined not to underrate what he might be capable of. Calendor belonged in the tower, if he would not wield it as he should, in the tower till he would wield it. Just until what? He had been intending to say something other than, until I come back. But what? And where are you going? Or do you mean to keep it a mystery? She was quietly vowing not to let him escape again, to turn him somehow if he meant to go running off to the 2 rivers when he surprised her. Not a mystery, Moiraine. Not from you and Egwene, anyway. He looked at Egwene and said one word. Ruidia. Wide-eyed, the girl appeared as astounded as if she had never heard the name before. For that matter, Moiraine felt scarcely less. There was a murmur among the Aiel, but when she glanced back, they were striding along with no expression whatsoever. She wished she could make them leave, but they would not go at her command, and she would not ask Rand to send them away. It would not help her with him to ask favors, especially when he might well refuse. You are not an Aiel clan chief, Rand, she said firmly, and have no need to be one. Your struggle is on this side of the Dragon Wall. Unless... Does this come from your answers in the ter'angreal? Cairhien and Callandor and Roidian? I told you those answers can be cryptic. You could be misunderstanding them, and that could prove fatal. To more than you. You must trust me, Moiraine, as I have so often had to trust you. His face might as well have belonged to an Aiel for all she could read in it. I will trust you for now. Just do not wait to seek my guidance until it is too late. I will not let you go to the shadow. I have worked too long to allow that, whatever it takes.
Chapter 22. Out of the Stone. It was a strange procession Rand led out of the stone and eastward, with white clouds shading the midday sun and a breath of air stirring across the city. By his order, there had been no announcement, no proclamation, but slowly word spread of something. Citizens stopped whatever they were doing and ran for vantage points. The Aiel were marching through the city, marching out of the city. People who had not seen them come in the night would only half believe they were in the stone at all, increasingly lined the streets along the route, filled the windows, even climbed onto slate rooftops, straddling roof peaks and upturned corners. Murmurs ran as they counted the Aiel. These few hundred could never have taken the stone. The dragon banner still flew above the fortress. There must be thousands of Aiel in there, and the Lord Dragon. Rand rode easily in his shirt sleeves, sure none of the onlookers could take him for anyone out of the ordinary. Rich enough to ride, and a superb dappled stallion, best for the modern bloodstock. A rich man traveling in the oddest way. Another man for that. Not even the leader of this strange company. That title was surely assigned to Lan or Moiraine, despite the fact that he was some little distance behind him, directly ahead of the Aiel. The soft, odd susurration that accompanied his passing certainly rose for the Aiel, not him. These tyrant folk might even take him for a groom, riding his master's horse. Well, no, not that. Not out in front as he was. It was a fine day anyway. Not sweltering, merely warm. No one expected him to mete out justice or rule a nation. He could simply enjoy riding in anonymity and a rare breeze. For a time, he could feel of his heron-branded palms in the reins. For a little while longer, anyway, he thought. A little longer. Rand, Egwene said, do you really think it was right to let the Aiel take all those things? He looked around as she heeled her gray mare Mist up beside him. From somewhere she had gotten a dark green dress with narrow divided skirts, and a green velvet band held her hair at the nape of her neck. Moiraine and Lan still hung back half a dozen strides, she on her white mare in a full-skirted blue silk riding dress, slashed with green, her dark hair caught in a golden net, he astride his great black warhorse, in a color-shifting warder's cloak that probably brought as many oohs and ahs as the Aiel. When the breeze stirred the cloak, shades of green and brown and gray rippled across it. When it hung still, it somehow seemed to fade into whatever was beyond it, so the eye appeared to be seeing through parts of Lan and dismount. It was not comfortable to look at. Mat was there too, slumped in his saddle and looking trying to keep apart from the warder and Aes Sedai. He had chosen a nondescript brown gelding, an animal he called Pips. It took a good eye to notice the deep chest and strong withers that promised blunt-nosed Pips could likely match Rand's stallion or Lan's for speed and endurance. Mat's decision to come had been a surprise. Rand still did not know why. Friendship, maybe. Then again, maybe not. Matt could be odd in what he did and why. Didn't your friend Avienda explain to you about the fifth? He asked. She mentioned something, but Rand, you don't think she took things too? Behind Moraine and Lan, behind Matt, behind Ruark, at their head the Aiel walked in long lines to either side of loaded pack mules, rank on rank, four abreast. When Aiel took one of the holds of an enemy clan in the waste, by custom, or maybe law, Rand did not understand it exactly. They carried away 1/5 of all it contained, accepting only food. They had seen no reason not to treat the stone the same. Not that the mules held more than the barest fraction of a 5th of the stone's treasures. Ruark said greed had killed more men than steel. The wickerwork pack hampers, topped with rolled carpets and wall hangings, were lightly laden. Ahead lay an eventual hard crossing of the spine of the world, and then a far harder trek across the waste. When do I tell them? He wondered. Soon now. It has to be soon. Moraine would doubtless think it daring, a bold stroke. She might even approve. Maybe. She thought she knew his whole plan now, and made no bones of disapproving that. No doubt she wanted it over and done as soon as possible. But the Aiel? What if they refuse? Well, if they refuse, they refuse. I have to do it. As for the fifth, he did not think it would have been possible to stop the Aiel from taking it, even had he wanted to, and he had not. They had earned their rewards, and he had no care to help Tyrant lords keep what they had wrung from their people over generations. I saw her showing Ruark a silver bowl, he said aloud. From the way her sack clinked when she stuffed the bowl in, there was more silver in there, or maybe gold. Do you disapprove? No. She drew the word out slowly with a touch of doubt, but then her voice firmed. I just hadn't thought of her. The Tyrants would not have stopped at a 5th if the positions had been reversed. They'd have carted away whatever wasn't part of the stonework, and stolen all the carts to haul it. Just because a people's ways are different doesn't mean they are wrong, Rand. You should know that. He laughed softly. This was almost like old times. He ready to explain why and how she was wrong, and she snatching his position and tossing him his own unvoiced explanation at him. His stallion danced a few steps, catching his mood. He patted the dapple's arched neck. A good day. That's a fine horse, she said. What have you named him? Giaden, he said, cautiously, losing some of his good spirits. He was a little ashamed of the name, of his reasons for choosing it. One of his favorite books had always been The Travels of Jayan Farstrider. That great traveler had named his horse Giaden, true finder in the old tongue, because the animal had always been able to find the way home. It would have been nice to think Giaden might carry him home one day. Nice, but not likely. And he did not want anyone suspecting the cause for the name. Boyish fancies had no place in his life now. There was not much room for anything but what he had to do. A fine name, she said absently. He knew she had read the book too, and half expected her to recognize the name, but she seemed to be mulling over something else, chewing her lower lip pensively. He was content with silence. The last dregs of the city gave way to country and pitiful scattered farms. Not even a conger or a coplin, two river folk notorious for laziness, among other things, would keep a place as run down and ramshackle as these rough stone houses, walls slanting as if about to topple over on the chickens scratching in the dirt. Sagging barns leaned against laurels or spicewoods. Roofs of cracked and broken slates all looked as if they leaked. Goats bleated disconsolately in stone pens that might have been thrown together hastily that morning. Barefoot men and women rode stoop-shouldered in unfenced fields, not looking up even when the large party was passing. Red beaks and thrushes warbling in the small thickets were not enough to lighten the feel of oppressive gloom. I have to do something about this. No, not now. First things first. I've done what I could for them in a few weeks. I can't do anything more now. He tried not to look at the tumble-down farms. Were the olive groves in the south as bad? The people who worked those did not even own the land. It all belonged to high lords. No. The breeze. Nice the way it cuts the heat. I can enjoy it a bit longer. I have to tell them soon now. Rand, Egwene said abruptly, I want to talk to you. Something serious by her expression. Those big dark eyes, fixed on him, held a light reminiscent of Nynaeve's when she was about to lecture. I want to talk about Elaine. What about her? He asked warily. He touched his pouch where 2 letters sprinkled against a small hard object. If they had not both been in the same elegantly flowing hand, you would not have believed they came from the same woman. And after all that kissing and snuggling, the High Lords were easier to understand than women. Why did you let her go in that way? Puzzled, he stared at her. She wanted to go. I'd have had to tie her up to stop her. Besides, she'll be safer in Tanchico than near me or Matt. If we are going to attract bubbles of evil the way Moraine says, you would be too. That isn't what I mean at all. Of course she wanted to go, and you had no right to stop her. But why didn't you tell her you wished she would stay? She wanted to go, he repeated, and grew more confused when she rolled her eyes as if he were speaking gibberish. If he had no right to stop Elaine, and she wanted to go, why was he supposed to try to talk her out of it? Especially when she was safe or gone. Moraine spoke, right behind him. Are you ready to tell me the next secret? It has been clear you were keeping something from me. At the least, I might be able to tell you if you are leading us over a cliff. Rand sighed. He had not heard her and Lan closing up on him. And Matt as well, although still holding a distance between himself and the Aes Sedai. Matt's face was a study. Doubt and reluctance and grim determination all running across it by turns, especially when he glanced at Moraine. He never looked at her directly, only from the edge of his eye. Are you sure you want to come, Matt? Rand asked. Matt shrugged and affected a grin, not a very confident one. Who could pass up a chance to see bloody Roydion? Egwene raised her eyebrows at him. Oh, pardon my language, Aes Sedai. I've heard you say is bad and for less cause, I'll wager. Egwene stared at him indignantly, but spots of color in her cheeks said he had scored a hit. Be glad Matt is here, Moraine said to Rand, her voice cool and not pleased. You made a grave error letting Perrin run off, hiding his going from me. The world rests on your shoulders, but they must both support you. You will fall, and the world with you. Matt flinched, and Rand thought he very nearly turned his gelding and rode away on the spot. I know my duty, he told her. And I know my fate, he thought. But he did not say that aloud. He was not asking sympathy. One of us had to go back, Moraine, and Perrin wanted to. You're willing to let anything go to save the world. I do what I have to. The warder nodded, though he said nothing. Lan would not disagree with Moraine in front of others. And the next secret, she said insistently. She would not give up until she had ferreted it out, and he had no reason to keep it secret any longer. Not this part of it. Portal stones, he said simply, if we are lucky. Oh, light, Matt groaned. Bloody flaming light! Don't grimace at me, Egwene. Lucky. Isn't once enough, Rand? You almost killed us, remember? No worse than killed. I would rather ride back to one of those farms and ask for a job slopping pigs the rest of my life. You can go your own way if you want, Matt, Rand told him. Moraine's calm face was a mask over fury, but he ignored the icy stare that tried to still his tongue. Even Lan looked disapproving, for all his hard face did not change very much. The warder believed in duty before anything else. Rand would do his duty, but his friends? He did not like making people do things. He did not do it to his friends. That much he could avoid, surely. You've no reason to be rejoiced. Oh, yes, I do. At least, oh, burn me. I've one life to give away, don't I? Why not like this? Matt laughed nervously and a bit wildly. Bloody portal stones, light. Rand frowned. He was the one they all said was supposed to go mad, but Matt was the one who seemed on the edge of it now. Egwene blinked at Matt worriedly, but it was Rand she leaned toward. Rand, Varen Sedai told me a little about portal stones. She told me about the journey you took. Do you really need to do this? It's what I have to do, Egwene. He had to move quickly, and there was no quicker way than portal stones. Remnants of an age older than the Age of Legends. Even Aes Sedai of the Age of Legends had not understood them, it seemed. But there was no quicker way, if it worked the way he hoped. Moraine had listened to the exchange patiently, especially to Matt's part of it, though Rand could not see why. Now she said, Varen also told me of your journey using portal stones. That was only a few people and horses, not hundreds. And if you did not almost kill everyone, as Matt says, it yet sounded an experience no one would wish to repeat. Nor did it turn out as you expected. It also required a great deal of the power. Almost enough to kill you, at least, Varen said. Even if you leave most of the Aiel behind, you dare risk the attempt. I have to, he said, feeling at his belt pouch, at the small hard shape behind the letters. But she went right on as if he had not spoken. Are you even certain there is a portal stone in the West? Varen certainly knows more of them than I, but I have never heard of one. If there is, will it place us any closer to Rhuidean than we are right now? Some 600 years or so ago, he told her, a peddler tried to get a look at Rhuidean. Another time it would have been a pleasure to be able to lecture her for a change. Not today. There was too much he did not know. This fellow apparently didn't see anything of it. He claimed to have seen a golden city up in the clouds, drifting over the mountains. There are no cities in the waste, Lance said. In the clouds or on the ground. I fought the Aiel. They have no cities. Egwene nodded. Avienda told me she had never seen a city until she left the waste.
Right back.
Maybe so, Rand said. But the peddler also saw something sticking out of the side of one of those mountains. A portal stone. He described it perfectly. There isn't anything else like a portal stone. When I described one to the chief librarian in the stone, without naming what he was after, he did not add, he recognized it, even if he didn't know what it was, enough to show me 4 on an old map of Tyr. 4? Moraine sounded startled. All in Tyr. Portal stones are not so common as that. 4, Rand said definitely. The bony old librarian had been certain, even digging out a tattered, yellowed manuscript telling of efforts to move the unknown artifacts of an earlier age to the Great Holding. Every attempt had failed, and the Tyrants had finally given up. That was confirmation to Rand. Portal stones resisted being moved. One lies not an hour's ride from where we are, he continued. The Aiel allowed the peddler to leave, since he was a peddler, with one of his mules and as much water as he could carry on his back. Somehow he made it as far as Steading in the spine of the world, where he met a man named Sauron Milo, who was writing a book called The Killers of the Black Veil. The librarian brought me a battered copy when I asked for books on the Aiel. Milo apparently based it all on Aiel who came to trade at the Steading. And he got almost everything wrong anyway, but a portal stone can't be anything but a portal stone. He had examined other maps and manuscripts, dozens of them, supposedly studying Tyr and its history, learning the land. No one could have had a clue what he intended before a few minutes ago. Moraine sniffed, and her white mare Alfie frisked a few steps, picking up her irritation. A supposed story of a supposed peddler who claimed to have seen a golden city floating in the clouds. Has Rourke seen this portal stone? He has actually been to Rhuidean. Even if this peddler did go into the waste and did see a portal stone, it could have been anywhere. A man telling a story usually tries to bet at what really happened. A city floating in the clouds. How do you know it doesn't? He said. Rourke had been willing to laugh at all the wrong things Milo had written about Aiel, but he had not been very forthcoming about Rhuidean. No, more than that. Or less, rather. The Aielman had refused even to comment on the parts of the book supposedly about Rhuidean. Rhuidean in the lands of the Jin Aiel, the clan which is not. That was almost the extent of what Rourke would say about it. Rhuidean was not to be spoken of. The Aes Sedai was not best pleased with his flippant remark, but did not care. She had too many secrets herself, made him follow her on blind trust too often. Let it be her turn. She had to learn that he was not a puppet. I'll take her advice when I think it's right, but I won't dance on Tarvalon's strings again. He would die on his own terms. Egwene moved her gray horse closer, riding almost knee to knee with him. Rand, do you really mean to risk our lives on a chance? Rourke did not tell you anything, did he? When I ask Avienda about Rhuidean, she shuts up tight as a hickory nut. Mat looked sick. Rand kept his face still, not letting his flash of shame show. He had not meant to frighten his friends. There is a portal stone there, he maintained. He rubbed the hard shape in his pouch again. This had to work. The librarian's maps had been old, but in a way, that was a help. The grasslands they rode now had been forest when those maps were drawn, but few trees remained. Far scattered, scraggly copses of white oak and pine and maidenhair. Tall, solitary trees he did not recognize, with gnarled, spindly trunks. He could make out the shape of the land easily. Hills shrouded mainly in high grass now.
Alright, everyone, probably call into this life right now. See if I can't lay down and get some sleep. But I want to thank everyone for stopping by, and everyone who keeps coming back and chilling with me. Definitely appreciate all y'all's support. Till next time, everyone, y'all stay safe out there.